Hello, thank you, and welcome, and welcome to another session of the Reading Live. And for today, we're going to review another book, and it's Elif Shafak's 10 minutes 38 seconds in this strange world. Now, this is a very interesting book and a highly recommended book for me, and we're going to talk about it for quite a few minutes. And just a bit of a background on this book that I possess. I bought this book in 2019 when I attended a talk or a lecture sponsored by my university, and Elif Shafak was there, and it's about her. It's an event about Elif Shafak promoting the book and talking about her as an author. So I attended, and then after the event, they were selling her book, and I bought one. I cannot remember how much did I buy this book, but I bought it in the venue, and then and Elif Shafak actually signed it. So this is a hard cover, hardbound book, and she actually signed it. Like, here, I met her in person, and so it says, "For Helia, it's so nice to meet and talk in London." So that's how I was able to acquire this book. I can still remember. I think I can still remember why did I attend the event where Elif Shafak was the speaker. At that time, I was really curious about authors or writers writing in English and also in their native language. So just a bit of a background about Elif Shafak. So Elif Shafak is one of those writers who are bilingual. So she writes and publishes books both in her native language, which is Turkish, and in English. And Elif Shafak is a very, very famous author in Turkey. She actually published a lot of books, both fiction and in social sciences. Okay, so, and both in English and in Turkish. So currently, she's living in the UK. She's a British Turkish author, and I googled around. I read about her life, and before this, I've never read any books written by Elif Shafak, and she had a very interesting background. Although she writes in Turkish, she writes in English. She used to live in the U.S. and America, and then permanently live here in the UK. But she was actually born in Strasbourg in France. So it's a very, very interesting background, moving from one place to another, experiencing different cultures, and I think writing, producing books in the different stages of her life, living in different countries. So it's I think with this book I will be reading more of Elif Shafak's older books, and then recently, just this month, August 2021, she released a new novel, and I think it was set in Cyprus. We're going to review it here as soon as I get hold of the book. So that's the background of the author Elif Shafak, and about this book. So this book is about 3 years old in 2019, and it was shortlisted for the Booker Prize, and I think that year it was Bernardine Evaristo and Margaret Atwood won the prize, but this book was one of the contenders for that year's Booker Prize. So I can still consider this as a new novel, but it's like 3 years old. Okay, so what is the book is all about? And the novel, 10 minutes 38 seconds into Strange World, it has a very, very interesting premise. It's actually at the jacket of the book. It says, "What if, after the moment of death, the human mind continues to work for a few more precious minutes? 10 minutes, 38 seconds exactly." So that's actually the premise of the book. So the entire novel is actually about the life of the main character, who's named Layla. She's a sex worker in Istanbul, And I'm not going to reveal spoilers here, but basically you know this. You read if you Google around, and then discover the book. Basically, the book begins with the end. So the prologue is actually the end. So, and at the beginning of the book, Layla will be killed. The main character. She will be killed by, I think, customers, by men, and then dump her body somewhere, in Istanbul. So the rest of the book actually is a structure. It was a structure that Layla, the main character, who was killed, and then um, uh, her body is already dead, but her consciousness, it still has 10 minutes and 38 seconds, and then she took it to remember her life, to go back in her life. So, like, it's the entire the book was structured that the character um, is remembering her life as she is slowly descending back into the void. I mean, death. Okay, and so what is this about? Lila, the main character, is she's a sex worker. She's a sex worker in in Istanbul, and she remembers everything from her childhood, her first love, the sexual abuse that she experienced with an extended family, an uncle, and how she suffered from neglect, from parents, and how she survived, how she struggled and survived with with patriarchy, on how men, or the cruelty of men, the misogyny of men to Lila, from her childhood to her adolescence, down to her moving to the city, and then end up working as a sex worker, and her experiences with her customers. So it's actually it's more of a story of patriarchy, of gender-based violence, and on top of that, the novel is also about a city. It's Istanbul. It's and I am always fascinated with Istanbul as a city. When I was young, in history books, Istanbul is being taught it's like it's a strip of land that connects the west and the east. So basically, Europe and Asia. So it's the one that it's the melting pot of European and Asian cultures, histories, and experiences. And the ancient name is Constantinople. It used to be a seat of power somewhere in the Ottoman Empire. It's something like that. So, and Elif Shafak, this particular book tells the story of Istanbul from the world of fascinating people that inhabit the place, like Layla and her 5 friends, a transgender woman, an undocumented migrant, and one with another woman with a small person. I think that's a proper word, a term to describe them. So, interesting human beings inhabit the city. It's also called the underbelly of Istanbul. So it talks about the novel talks about these beautiful characters and the city of Istanbul beyond those tourism brochures and government videos, sponsored videos about the city, inviting tourists to visit the place. And more than that, I think the book, why I really love this book, because it teaches me, I think, when I was reading the book, although I know that it's not my age, I'm familiar with this, that familiarity and acceptance and tolerance to different forms of life, meaning the kinds of life people choose, and accept it, that because not everyone, it's not everyone live the same kind of life that you have, And when we encounter someone like, for example, like a sex worker or someone that possesses a different politics or values, like we have to understand that they are also human beings, that somewhere in their life they decided to inhabit this kind of life and perform this kind of life and decide that this is going to be my life. And then they also have friends, they have families, and they have histories. So the book actually tells us about the beauty and the limits also of tolerance. And I think that's why I really, really love this book, because it exposes me or reminds me again of a kind of life frame in acceptance. Okay, and I think in her talk and some of her of her article, and even in recorded video, I think Elif Shafak was very, very open about her politics of being a liberal, and I think in a certain way, especially now that we're living in a world where governments are being run by conservative politicians and conservative values are being imposed to us, there is a certain level of a breather, I guess, from this kind of world that we have right now, if we consider to be tolerant of other people's decisions about their lives and how they're going to live their lives. So I think 10 minutes 38 seconds in this strange world, it's successful, and rendering a world inhabited by people with different kinds of life patterns and unusual decisions about their lives. And the good thing about this also, like, although the characters, she was killed, she died, and her friends, instead of mourning, being sad about what happened to her, the friend of Layla actually celebrated in a way her life. And the only way to remember her is to celebrate life itself and the kind of life that they were given to them by a patriarchal society. And that, in a way, I think the novel is telling us, the story is telling us that there are several ways on how to counter or to engage a patriarchal society. It's either you engage it, face to face and to dismantle it totally, but definitely there are several ways on how to engage it. And I think this book is very successful in telling us on how to how to counter and engage patriarchy in our society. Like even at this point, we hear in the news how women, violence against women, sexual violence, neglect to sex workers, and then women who are being subjected to torture, subjected to modern day slavery. And I think this is a good book because there's one character here who was also a migrant, an undocumented migrant from somewhere from Africa, and then she was thrown into sex work because of the of the situation of a hostile environment against on undocumented migrants or migrants living in Turkey and Istanbul. So in a way that the novel is trying to capture, is attempting to capture the realities of women struggling to survive in this kind of world that we have right now. So I think 10 minutes 38 seconds in this strange world, although this is 3 years old or 4 years old, I think it's still relevant to now, especially now, in our society. So for me, I highly recommend this book by Elif Shafak, and I think if you're really unfamiliar with her work like me, I think this is a good introduction to this work of a very, very, very interesting and contemporary Turkish author.